Hey guys, what's going on?
99 problems.
I know, right? That seems to be our theme.
I'm staying chill today.
I know. Well, I'm sitting here and I'm watching this weather thing right now.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting for them to tell me if it's going to rain this weekend or not. They say it's a 1% chance that it will not turn into a tropical storm, but we're predicting rain. Heavy rain in East Texas, and I'm like, oh my god!
No weekend to go to the lake. That's
No,
for sure,
I wanted to do that, so I guess I'm just going to stay at home and read.
But on a better note, today is the Army's birthday.
I know.
Happy 243rd.
Happy birthday, Army.
There you go. It's funny because before we do these, we usually sit around and we're kind of shooting the breeze. We're trying to kind of set the tone and get ourselves ready for these recordings. And we had an interesting conversation. We were talking about things we used to do when we were kids, and we would ride bikes and build bikes, and we were talking about jumping pools and
man, all kinds of crazy.
all the fun stuff. And it was really interesting because we would be from sun up to sundown.
Oh yeah.
And
Occupied.
sometimes beyond that.
Yeah.
And there was you usually had a fishing pole attached to your bike. You'd go to the creek and go fishing, or a pond, or you'd have a baseball bat and a ball glove, and so. And we would it'd be a community of kids out playing. I mean, we would pick up baseball games and whatever we did, we'd just have a good time. And now we're kind of sitting talking about kids nowadays and the things they occupy themselves with. And we kind of stumbled across kind of an interesting one here that's been kind of controversial. And it's an active shooter game. It's an online active shooter game that comes to us from Russia.
Which is the title.
Yeah, and it's called Active Shooter.
I think they changed it to SWAT to make it feel a little bit more politically correct.
Yeah, so I think you can be both.
Yeah,
it's a game where you can either be the student or the shooter or the SWAT guy. But what was interesting is when we started looking at that, there were some other games they had that was quite bizarre.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you gotta share those.
Graham, you got the list. What's the list?
Yeah, so we had a suicide simulator, which seems to be pretty self-explanatory. They had this other game called Kindergartner, and that was you kind of looked at it going, what could that game possibly be about? So when I dove into it, it had two playable characters. You were either the school principal or the school janitor. And basically the principal hunts down children through the school and shoots them, or the school janitor hunts them down and basically hacks them all up.
Wow.
The funniest one that I read was, now this game has since been shuttered. They said that it was a what was it? Oh, it was called AIDS? It was an an AIDS simulator. And their catchphrase for this game was, when you get into this game, it welcomes you with basically, welcome to Africa, you have HIV. And then, that's something that comes across on your speakers.
God.
And so, all of y'all that were looking for that title release, well, your dreams have been shattered.
That $20 won't be spent this time around.
That's bizarre. I mean, I remember games we used to play, and it was nothing like that.
We've come a long way from Pong.
Pong and air combat. Remember combat?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Space Invaders.
No,
Galaga, Centipede,
yes.
Frogger, Pac-Man. I mean, those were actually skill games, if you ask me, because it was about timing and stuff like that.
I learned patterns. I mean, it really taught you some mental acuity and stuff.
And I didn't know years later that Missile Command was written off of Tom Sawyer, the kill screens.
Yes.
I did not know that. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, I learned that in an 80s trivia deal somewhere.
That was bizarre. But so this active shooter game's got everybody all twisted up. And obviously there's going to be, it's really close to what happened in Santa Fe. The timing couldn't have been any worse for these guys.
Right. Yes.
And I don't think they knew, really, because their news cycle over there really doesn't keep up with the things we do.
Yeah,
here.
Russia probably doesn't see the same stuff that we see. They probably don't get it 24/7 of this is what happened today.
Yeah, because even this developer's stateside advocates stated, look, this particular person doesn't track the media events that happen here in the United States, so it wasn't meant to be sort of a trolling a trolling event.
But you know, you still got to be some sort of twisted asshole to make a game like that. I don't care who you are.
It's pretty bizarre.
I'm just go ahead and put this out
there.
Fuck you in the ass if you make a game like that. I fucking hate you. That's from me to you. But go ahead and make your game.
If you look at when you boil it down to its premise, it's a playable character, chasing something.
I get it.
Yeah,
it's pixels on a screen. Yes, is what it is. I get that.
And so I'm am I going to stifle somebody's attempt at trying to make a buck?
Yeah.
No, not really.
I will, because I think war in the free market is fair. Mm-hmm. If I can defeat you in the free market, I think that's a fair and just cause.
Okay.
Now, I don't think I should use the government to do that. Does that make sense? Do you track what I'm saying when I say that?
Okay, so here was my flip to that.
Okay.
Let's say that an American developer created a game where basically you're a player in the Kremlin or Red Square, and you go on a murder spree walking around there. Would the outrage be as great in the U.S.?
I would almost say that would make Xbox or something along those lines. You could see them producing something.
Call of Duty did that.
Yeah,
where it was one of them where they were going through the airport in Russia, just mowing down people.
Yeah. Right.
Now they gave you a warning. I gave you a warning at the beginning of the game that this is going to contain some very controversial stuff.
Right.
I even think there was some kind of rating thing you had to do to get past that. But so yeah, I mean it's there, okay, and I can kind of understand. I can understand the passion behind telling these guys where to put it. But also, too, I look at it as if it's like anything else. If people want it, they're going to find a way to get it. Right. Somebody's going to make it. So somebody's filling a demand for somebody.
Well, nowadays, even warning people that something is going to be might be disagreeable to them is now not enough, even though you warned them. Well, and people still bitch about it.
It's a mark. It makes you want to buy it.
That makes no sense to me. I agree with you on that.
It does. Totally. But it makes them want to buy it. If you say, no, you can't do that, that's bad for the kids, what's the first thing the kid's going to go do? Who's going to be the first one on the block to get that?
That's my point behind defeating it in the idea of freedom. Sure. You know what I'm saying? I want the free idea out there and defeat it on its merit. That's
so you would hope that good taste and prudence would kill it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I can understand that, but it's funny. We don't live in that world anymore. We really don't.
We don't, and
it's unfortunate because you look at what is the real problem here, and so to me, it's a suspension of reality. It really is. We're putting moral arguments on the table.
Right. And
we're being told you can't have a moral argument. We're being told that if you take a stand against something you think is wrong, you're either a racist, a bigot, or some kind of some phobe of some kind. Which is kind of really weird because I look at this now and I'm going, okay, so they're bagging on these games, but yet they'll make a series like Game of Thrones, which has all kinds of crazy weird shit goes on in that. And then you have Westworld. Yeah. And what I thought was funny, I had to write it down so I wouldn't forget it. But Westworld, their tagline is live without limits in a world where every human appetite can be indulged.
Right.
And so what do they do in that series? You have sex
and free murder.
And you murder.
Rape and murder is
rape and murder is in that.
I try to live like that every day.
Well, yeah, I hear you. I hear you. In your mind, right, Sam? In your mind. And that's
my world.
and that's a very good point. Because a lot of people will escape into books. You have 50 Shades of Grey.
Yes.
Okay, so you live in a world where everybody's like, oh, no man's going to control me. Yet that's the most number one selling. Yeah. That's the top selling book. And it has made 3 versions of the movie.
Tell me again why you want me to put a leash on you?
It's funny, having a wife that's been kind of a writer. She's dabbled in writing and talked to publishers and looked at kind of the romance novel side of things. A lot of these books that they publish contain like rape fantasy stuff.
Yeah.
And that's like one of the big attractions.
Right.
It's bizarre how the human mind wants to work and
it is. So
wrap itself around that.
And that suspension of reality is like, okay, so you read those books, you watch those movies, you play those video games. What is the likelihood of those influencing you to commit a crime?
Right.
Or act out on it? So back in the day, you can probably say it's a high percentage that it really didn't happen.
Right.
Okay, so but nowadays, I think there's a shift there because now people are having a hard time suspending the reality and fantasy and drawing a line, and they're swinging over into acting it out. Because what I thought was funny, this is kind of bizarre for me. I took a parallel of this game, and I said, okay, let's look at violent games and let's look at pornography. Okay. So they're making the argument that active shooter games, or games that involve shooting or firearms, increases the rate of somebody killing somebody. Okay. So we looked at that, and I kind of come up with some numbers a little bit on this. So pornography, which blew me away, according to Pornhub, 28.5 billion visitors a year.
Wow.
How many?
28.5 billion. That breaks down to 78.1 million per day, 1,000 per minute.
Sorry, Mom.
Yeah. So, so
make that 1,002.
Yeah.
So if you take that number, so rape should be like commonplace.
Right.
It should be like literally.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so you're looking at television with a lot of lustful images going on.
Sure.
And you have all this stuff that's going on. So you would think then, according to their logic, then, oh man, everybody's getting raped.
You've got to admit, no matter what side of the spectrum you fall on, that imagery is pushed on you like almost every minute of the day, no matter where you are.
Yeah.
And based on what you said, NASCAR, watching NASCAR breeds people to speed on the street all the time.
Hey, go fast, Ricky Bobby.
There you go. If you ain't first, you're last.
Yeah.
But also too, on a serious side, we've seen this huge increase now of starlets coming out saying, "Hey, this is happening to us." So now again,
it's coming from the people that write
that stuff and produce it, which I think is really interesting.
Right.
So for me in my brain, I'm going, look, the average viewer is probably a pretty normal person. They're looking to escape a little bit of reality through some fantasy.
Sure.
But they don't live it, breathe it, and act it. Right. So I look at violent games and movies. Does it necessarily mean it leads you to murder?
Right.
So if you looked at the billions of games, if you look at, of all the games that are sold, 47% of these games and movies that are sold promote violence of some kind. If you take the total population of the world, and if you said that if those numbers are right, does that mean 47% of the population is murdering and killing people?
Right. Yeah,
no.
That's obviously not true.
Very small numbers, right? So, I start thinking about that a little bit, and I'm like, where is the breakdown coming down? And I kind of found some interesting numbers that kind of went with that. And we were talking 70% of Americans are on some kind of prescription drug.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of staggering if you think about it.
That's a lot of people. Especially when you look at the ages that you and I were talking about.
Yeah.
When you look at ages 0 to 17, how many of those people are on some sort of prescription medication?
CDC says 7.5 million.
That's a lot of kids.
And that was 2017, 2018
and
numbers.
To tangent off of that, because I play the stocks a lot, I'm constantly looking at biotech and pharmaceuticals. Sure. And those, I can tell you,
it's
out
of
all the
it
is that industry alone
right.
is a huge producer.
Yep.
I'm just shocked when I start seeing those kind of numbers. And what I thought was interesting was of that 14% of people are on antidepressants. Of that number, 13 are on pain-killing opiates, and which I thought was really bizarre.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, that's such a mind-altering. You're messing with chemistry at that point.
Sure.
And you're changing chemistry permanently.
When
you're dealing with that. I've talked about this in the past. I'm a firm believer in medications like that altering people and altering them in such a way that they can't come back from it. I really believe that.
Right.
I think there's science behind what I'm saying. Well,
sure.
I know that there's science behind what I'm saying. Now, not everybody might agree with it, but how many of those people are in the bag for pharmaceuticals?
Sure.
And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I'm telling you, that stuff is dangerous. And I think people see it on TV, and they play the happy music, and everybody floats around on a cloud, and it's like, oh, it fixed all my problems. And then you get to the end of it, where the guy rattles off all the
2 minutes of the things it does to kill you.
Yeah. Anal bleeding and everything
it's
else
some
that comes
crazy
along
shit,
with it.
right? So it's interesting because of those numbers that broke down, some of the issues that come off of those are going to be dependency and withdrawal.
Yeah.
Right? So that creates kind of, I would say, a suspended reality of a person who's now not normal at this point.
Right.
So then they're going to medicate you some more to help you through that, which I think is... And to your point, you are what you eat. So whatever you put in your body, it's going to go do something to affect your DNA somewhere, somehow. And that is a big problem.
Sure.
They tell you anesthesia takes a year to get completely out of your body.
Yes.
Just imagine continual doses of warfarin or whatever else they're giving you, Zoloft, Paxil, whatever it is. Yeah.
More than anybody, the chemicals that go into processed foods.
Absolutely. So, so that's another component that now is adding to this equation of the breakdown of a human condition.
Right.
So you look at the way they broke these numbers out was they basically said that women and teenagers are more likely to be hooked or prescribed antidepressants than men. Women and teenagers. So and with teenagers, it didn't say between boys or girls; it just said teenagers in general. And then also of that number, 13% on the painkillers tend to be men, mostly because of injuries at work, sports injuries.
You think about that. Kids play ball. They're going to get put on some sort of opioid. I mean, that's how you kill pain. That's a fact of life.
So now we take that in consideration. Now let's look at the average American with the lack of sleep. So lack of sleep deprivation. You're in a hole all day long playing a video game. Okay.
Sure.
You come out and you're trying to interact in public, and say you kind of are a nerd at that point, and they're making fun of you, and you don't have the fortitude to think on the right track. So you probably don't eat well. You don't sleep well. You're taking a medication. Okay. You've got all these things that are going on. Your suspension of reality is going to be quite thin.
You start adopting things probably from the game that you're playing.
Obviously. Sure. I would think that would be... So if you look at a psychological profile, which you might balk at this, Graham, I don't know, but I want to look at kind of a psychological profile of the people that would fit this. I think you can take kids that were bullied, that exist on this medication, that have no personal upbringing with a family, they don't have a family core unit, they've raised themselves, and now you've got all this other stuff that's been introduced into this equation, whether it's through diet, sleep deprivation. I mean...
Well, you have a society now of people that are really in limbo. They're kind of lost because they don't know how to get their shit together.
Right.
They really don't. Because if you look at it, self-help videos, books, and programs are the top sellers.
Sure.
People make billions of dollars in that industry on self-help.
But if you look at some of the people that are doing this, okay, so if they're experiencing some sort of a struggle in their life of somehow, and they immerse themselves in some fanciful game or book or something,
right?
It's not a foregone conclusion that they might be influenced by the game that they're playing or the book that they're reading, because at some point they're trying to extract something that may make their life a little bit better than it currently is.
Maybe, or are they using this as a template? You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
It could be it could go either way. I'm not disagreeing with your point at all, but I think it could also be used as a template as well.
It's like, I'm not Hercules, but if I read enough books about Hercules, I can become Hercules.
It boils down to profiling and what you want to do with this profile of the person that we're talking about at the end of it. You see what I'm?
Oh, I do. We're tracking. Yeah, we're tracking on that because it's funny because. Back when television sitcoms were really big, like Everybody Loves Raymond, Friends, all those shows out there, The Office, Parks and Recreation, how much does that culture affect pop culture and how people interact at work? I mean, seriously, I've seen grown-ups where I heard them say something that I heard on TV the night before.
That's what she said. How many times did we hear that? And that's from a freaking show.
Yeah. I will say, when you take... like certain shows that you watch, if you work in let's say work is the best example I can use, is if it's sort of stressful or very not stressful but just very regimented. If you want to lighten,
you're talking about breaking the monotony.
If you want to lighten the mood a little bit,
bust a joke.
Yes.
Bust a quote or a joke is something that...
Or grab a big freaking wrench and go hit something while a welder is doing something.
But what's really sad, though, okay, so that used to be the case, but it's now you can't do that because you got to worry about who you're offending.
Sure. Yes. Oh, you introduce stress into the workplace, in their opinion. They're going to fire you or make you go to counseling for
and
that.
You further compartmentalize this problem because now what happens is this normal... that you always hear, that guy was such a normal, nice guy. Well, you hear that the normal, jovial guy gets pinched down further and further into a funnel. That energy goes somewhere.
Yeah.
That energy goes somewhere. And what happens when you create self-doubt in somebody because of what they said, or if you ostracize them, when they think they were saying something innocently, and then all of a sudden you're tearing into them and you're making them feel less than what they are to make yourself feel better about some bullshit theory you have.
Yeah.
Where does that guy go? Some people will just like
remove
remove
themselves. Killed his avenue.
Yes, he's taken and he's removed. Some people will remove themselves from the room, go somewhere else, get another job, whatever. Some people, that's all they have. So what do? They lash out. This is where you get the passion and the violence in these crimes, and we're seeing more and more of that. But what's even worse about that is in their mind, when they're off into that strange brainwave pattern of I don't give a shit, they're relating to what they've seen the night before, the week before. The Taxi Driver always seems to be the movie that comes up with some of these people to where they pull that stuff that the De Niro character, which, by the way, is the biggest piece of shit on the planet. I hate that guy. Yeah. But anyway, that's my public service announcement for that jerk. And because we'll take, hey, Bobby, actually, we're going to do a cast on you, and you're going to love it. Yeah. You're going to love it, bud, because you are a piece of shit.
Yeah.
But anyway, you take that character and you unleash him on a family. How many times have we seen that happen? Where these crimes of they'll go in and kill a family. This most recent one where a girl got tired of a guy hitting on her. He was being a creep. He went back and got even with everybody.
He did.
And he thought that shit was funny.
It was definitely not random. It wasn't
not
random
at all.
For him.
Premeditated.
It was definitely premeditated.
Yeah. So, to me, did he play video games? Did it make him do it? I don't believe so. If it did, okay, great, but I don't think that was the case. The case of the matter was he didn't like the rejection he got. He didn't like the pressure he got from everybody. So instead of taking it like a man and moving on and growing up, he decided he's going to go and kill a bunch of people. And I think that's a bunch of bullshit. That's where we get in trouble with these things. But what's worse now is I ask myself, so is this a reality? Or is this a political drama that's playing out in front of us?
I believe that you're right in that here's what it gets turned into, in my opinion. I think people will see this, and as the idea gets promoted, I think it'll be used as a tool to moderate what people do and then promote their message that they want in the end. That's the bad thing about this. When you inject control, when you inject a control into this, whether it be through the MPA or through whatever organization you want to use, a governmental entity, when you start controlling what really is free speech, you can see it as that.
Sure.
Then it becomes a tool of propaganda for whatever message they want to put out there.
Oh, no doubt. I think that when you start looking at educators, they want more control over stuff like this. Sure, they want to be able to tell your children what they can and cannot do. They already do it now in some sense. They tried it with lunch. They tried to tell you that you don't get to eat what you like. We're going to tell you what you need to eat. And you saw how that went.
Yeah.
You had a lot of people throwing food away. We wasted millions of dollars on food that kids didn't eat because it's not the fact that you couldn't have convinced the kid to eat healthier. It's the approach you took.
Yeah.
You know, you just don't go to somebody and say, look, we are smarter than you. This is how you should live your life, and this is what we're going to do. So I look at it when I look at this argument we're having right here. Because I'm saying, or not argument, but discussion on these video games. Yeah, granted, it is in poor taste. Completely. It's not something that the average person should subscribe to. But does it hurt you? Does it really hurt you? I can play that game.
Yeah.
And not go out and want to kill anybody. I honestly could. Now, I would look at it more for the entertainment value because I would laugh my ass off at that AIDS game. Because I would try to get to the next level just to hear what kind of thing that would say. Yeah. How do I die?
Yeah.
You know, is it based on time? Do I get transfusions to save my life? I mean, just my mind is rolling on this one.
Where's the interferon clinic?
Yeah.
But see, that's the old gamer. That's like me and you. That's the old gamer coming out. How can I... What pattern can I detect in this game to beat it?
Exactly. So. And so that's a challenge to the mind. That's not a detriment to the soul.
Correct.
Okay? So for me... the premise of the game is just a premise. Okay? It's just because I'll be honest with you, I'm in my mid-50s, but I've played with my nephews, and I've played games sometimes, and Call of Duty's fun. Is it real? No. Does it make me better on the range? No.
Yeah.
Doesn't teach me anything, but what it does do is it allows me to de-stress. It allows me to get away from the reality of paying bills, fixing a house, dealing with people at work.
Allowed me to not be bored for an
hour. And it allows me to kind of exercise some of those demons.
Right.
And they stay right there. I don't get up and go, okay, I did that. I'm bored. Let me go get a gun and go shoot somebody. I think that is completely bullshit when they try to relate it to that. Because if that was the case, we've already talked about violent movies. They're almost all violent. They have some kind of slash, kill, murder, rape, destroy, whatever it is. We talked about pornography. Okay, I mean that's another. Okay, to me, it's just bullshit to say that this creates these problems.
It's a tool.
It's
that simple. It's a tool, and how you use it. You can apply that to anything in life at this point.
Now, is pornography good for society? I don't believe it is. I really don't.
Probably not.
Because I think the average person can't handle complex.
My carpal tunnel syndrome is awful.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I know, because I'm just saying in general, because it is kind of.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, because when you look at it, and the reason why I say that is I looked at top searches. It didn't say romantic sessions with my wife. It didn't say this or that or the other. The top search, sex with my stepmother.
Oh.
The second top search, sex with my stepsister. What the hell is that?
Somebody likes their sister a lot.
But that's the top searches when you start looking at this stuff.
Yeah.
So if it was artistic, like they try to say it is, and it was nice and beautiful,
I need to change my search query.
I'm telling you, I can kind of see that. But when you start seeing that this is where society's moving, that again is pretty concerning. It's concerning, and I have to ask myself, who's behind that?
Freud would probably have some fairly interesting commentary.
I think it would be fun.
I think it would be fun to dig Freud up and see what he had to say about that.
So I got to thinking then. So we've kind of walked through some pretty interesting and some thought provocative subject matter. But the one thing is like, who's profiting from this? I know we touched on it a little bit earlier, and I know you kind of summarized a little bit about where the educators are going with it.
Sure.
But when you sit there and you look at the moral police, we went through this with records. With the Al Gore and Tipper Gore years ago. I'm not going to listen to that stuff, so I'm not going to buy it, so it doesn't affect me.
Right.
Okay? I think in a free market, you have to be true to the market and just leave it out there.
Let the market correct itself. That's always my philosophy on it.
Yeah.
The judges, whether something succeeds or fails in the market, is solely dependent on the consumer. If the consumer doesn't buy it, then it fails.
So here's where I see the big difference in that philosophy is that if it's on its own, it does it. But if you use the media to promote it,
that's the problem.
Or if Hollywood promotes it, or if somebody else promotes it, then you are now corrupting it. Because if you're jamming it in somebody's face 24/7, you're going to pick off a pretty good percentage of them. They're going to go ahead and succumb to that.
Now, I will, because I thought about this last night. Was when I was married, my wife and I were the regulators on what our kids saw and did not.
There you go.
There is no way my son or daughter came home with something that was going to be questionable and that I was going to say, how the hell did you get that?
Right.
No.
But that control is largely out of today's...
Well, I was going to say, because when I was writing my thoughts down last night, my attitude and how things were then is way different than it is now. But that's something for another discussion.
Right.
Because this evolution, de-evolution of, parental responsibilities, that I'm not even going to go venture down that road.
Right. No, and I get that. What I think is interesting about that is, so if the parents are pulling further away and the government is advocating again to take that control away from the parent. And that's the big concern I have here, is because the secondary gain is going to be the fact that, look, it takes a village to raise your children because you're just too damn incompetent to do so.
You would not say that.
I know, I hate that phrase with a passion, but that's what they rally behind.
Right.
They rally behind that bullshit. And what they don't realize is that when you take a kid away from a family unit and you put them in a group unit, that's where you learn your worst habits. That's where you get exposed to the most dangerous things, because you have the racy kids there. You have the kids with all this bad stuff going on.
Right.
I hate to say racy because it sounded
the curve.
dorky,
The curve is down towards the end. You're dealing with the lowest common denominator.
It absolutely is. So you're taking basically the morality and the values that a family brings to the table.
Right.
And I'm not. It's not even, to me. It's not even a religion thing, because you can believe in God, you can believe in goats, chickens, you can believe in whatever the hell you want to believe in. But if you have a centering core value system in your family, you're going to adhere to that. And you're going to have some kind of standard of living.
Right.
When you take that away, and it's told that, well, you know what? It's open to interpretation. Let the kid figure it out. Really? So when my parents used to say, hey, they never asked me, hey, would you like to go to bed at 7 o'clock so you can get plenty of sleep and be ready to go to school in the morning? They never said that.
Go to bed.
Letting a boat drift on the lake and saying that it'll park itself.
Yeah.
No.
I just look at this and I'm wondering now who gets the secondary gain from this.
It's hard to point to. I mean, really, it's hard to point to who ends up with it. It's wherever it lands at this point.
Right.
Who picks it up and runs with it?
Well, it's funny because so I've started seeing things that are popping up that are picking up on this.
Okay.
Artificial intelligence. We talked about this earlier.
We did.
And so, when you start looking at artificial intelligence, we were laughing the other day because there's this real doll. So this guy started years ago making silicone replicant bodies of voluptuous females and males for sex partners for people that wanted to go out and do those such things.
Uh-huh.
Well, he's moved up to the level now where it has artificial intelligence. It actually talks now.
It asks you questions.
Is that Syl, the one that has the bald-headed robot?
Well, no, she has wig and everything like that. This is the real doll.
Yeah.
And it has an atomic.
I'm a real boy.
Yeah, basically. And she talks, and her face has muscular movement.
It does.
They have a silicon mask that fits over a skeleton that has attachments by magnets, and you can change the color of the hair, and then you can reprogram the voice. Yeah. So these things are getting like completely real now.
Well, they actually attune themselves to your personality.
They do.
That's the bizarre part.
It's kind of like Alexa with a body.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's really manifested.
That's a good example.
It is. It's perpetuated because it's the same intelligence that uses it.
Yep.
And so you have that. You have that now coming out. Then you got the virtual reality part of it. We were looking the other day at this company in Japan that has a machine that has some kind of orifice that you are able to enter this thing, and then you put on the virtual reality goggles and the ears, and it basically, you are now in a virtual world of whatever you want.
Well, I mean, in the world of technology, porn is usually the platform that brings the technology to the forefront.
Because when you're making something, you want to appeal to the largest mass and the largest deficit. So when you have people that aren't relating, they don't really know how to talk, or they don't know how to compete, what do?
Apparently masturbate.
Yeah, you give them. Yeah, you give them an autonomous.
The numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's a reason why the AVN Awards and the Consumer Electronics Show happen at the same time.
Right.
Which I just think is bizarre. I mean, I know it's we made this huge curve.
Yeah.
But when you start talking about suspending reality and you start talking about taking the blame away from your responsibility and you're replacing it with artificial stimuli and all these things that we're creating.
It's all under this umbrella. This whole thing that we've discussed is completely under this umbrella.
Yeah, which is it's completely crazy. So it kind of leads you. So there's a phrase out there, and it's called artificial consciousness and the evolution of sin.
Wow.
And I just thought that was kind of
deep.
Isn't that? It is kind of deep.
Very philosophical.
It is. So you look at that and you say, okay, so sin is where money is. It really is. And so when we start looking at these sins, murder is sin.
Yeah. It is.
Okay? So infidelity and all these other things, they're sins. And where's the money going?
To the root of evil.